The dining hall was silent, except for the faint clinking of glasses and the rustle of expensive suits shifting in their chairs. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting golden light over the long mahogany table where some of the most powerful business leaders of the city sat. Yet, despite the glittering plates and the lavish atmosphere, there was a heavy tension in the air. At the center of it sat her, the billionaire CEO, a woman whose presence should have commanded respect, but instead, she was drowning in the thick silence of misunderstanding. She sat straight-backed, her eyes sharp yet vulnerable, her long black hair pulled into a simple bun that betrayed her preference for substance over flash. Everyone knew her as an enigma. She had built an empire from nothing, climbed the mountain of global business, and broken every ceiling that had been placed above her. But now, here at this elite dinner, her strength seemed muted. Words had failed her. The others exchanged glances, shifting awkwardly, as her voice filled the room in fluent Japanese. The problem was simple yet devastating, none of them understood her. The investors, the lawyers, the politicians, they all stared blankly, pretending to smile, nodding as if they followed her words, when in truth, not a single one could make sense of what she was saying. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration, a meeting to finalize a landmark deal that would change industries, save jobs, and pave the way for innovation. But instead, it was turning into an invisible wall. The billionaire CEO's words carried vision and strategy, yet all they heard was foreign music without meaning. She was alone at the table, misunderstood and quietly judged. Then, in the background, unnoticed by most, stood a young waitress. Her dark skin glowed in the warm light, her eyes quietly observant as she moved from guest to guest, refilling glasses, carrying plates with grace. She had been invisible to the room of powerful people, just part of the service, a shadow meant to disappear into the background. But she was listening. Every word. Every pause. Every carefully chosen Japanese phrase. The waitress' name was Amara. She was 26 years old, working nights at the luxury hotel to pay for her education. What no one knew, what she never mentioned in job interviews, was that she had spent 5 years living in Japan as a child. Her father had been stationed there, and in those years she had absorbed the language like a second heartbeat. Though she hadn't used it often since, the cadence, the nuance, the emotion, it all returned to her as she heard the CEO speak. Amara noticed something else too. The CEO's voice wasn't just professional, it was trembling slightly, as if she had been carrying the weight of loneliness for too long. She was a woman in a room where men smirked behind polite facades. She was a foreign tongue in a place that only valued its own. She was brilliant, but at that moment, brilliance looked like isolation. The silence grew unbearable. The billionaire CEO finished her sentence and looked around the table, her eyes searching desperately for connection, for a spark of comprehension. But all she met was emptiness. One of the investors whispered to another, smirking at the oddity of it all. A lawyer cleared his throat, pretending to write something down. Someone else whispered, "Why doesn't she just speak English?" And Amara's heart clenched at the disrespect dripping from their voices. In that moment, something inside her refused to stay quiet. She stepped forward, trembling at her own boldness, and spoke. "Excuse me," Amara said softly at first. All eyes flicked to her, surprised that a waitress dared interrupt the dinner. But she stood a little taller, her voice steady now. "She's saying something important. And if you'd allow me, I can translate." The room froze. The billionaire CEO's eyes widened, the first flicker of hope breaking through her isolation. Amara turned to her and spoke in perfect Japanese, "Would you like me to share your words?" The CEO blinked, stunned, and then, her lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time that night, her voice softened, and she nodded. And so, Amara began. Line by line, sentence by sentence, she carried the CEO's vision into English. What was once an empty silence became a room full of gasps, nods, and wide eyes. The men who had dismissed her words now leaned forward, struck by the power they had almost ignored. The deal she described wasn't just business, it was transformation. She spoke of creating opportunities for the poor, of restructuring systems to value human dignity, of innovation that would not leave the vulnerable behind. It wasn't just about money, it was about meaning. And as Amara translated, her own voice trembled with emotion. She wasn't just repeating words, she was feeling them. The CEO looked at her with gratitude that went beyond words, her eyes saying, "Finally, someone hears me." But not everyone was pleased. Some of the men at the table looked uncomfortable. Power had shifted, and they felt it. No longer could they dismiss her. The waitress, the one they had ignored, had shattered their illusion of superiority. Still, they had no choice but to listen. By the end of the dinner, the air was completely transformed. What had begun as silence and mockery ended with respect and awe. The billionaire CEO stood, and instead of addressing the table directly, she turned to Amara. "In Japanese," she said, "you didn't just translate my words. You gave me my voice back." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She had only done what felt right, yet she had changed everything. That night, the deal was signed not because of wealth or power, but because one woman dared to step out of the shadows and bridge a gap no one else cared to cross. But the story didn't end at that table. In the weeks that followed, the CEO made a decision. She contacted Amara, offering her more than just thanks. She offered her a future. Amara was given a scholarship, mentorship, and later, a position in the company where her voice could continue to matter. From waitress to interpreter of dreams, Amara's life was rewritten. And as for the CEO, she never forgot that night. For all her billions, for all her accolades, it wasn't wealth or status that gave her strength. It was connection. And it was the courage of a young woman who believed that no voice should go unheard. This story is a reminder, my friends, that kindness is never wasted. That listening can change lives. That sometimes, the most overlooked person in the room holds the key to everything. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you. What part of it resonated with you most? Have you ever been in a situation where someone finally understood you after feeling invisible? Share your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one. And if you believe in stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of our shared humanity, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Be kind always. Your support helps me bring more powerful stories like this to life. Remember, kindness has the power to change the world, one small act, one courageous moment at a time.